Have you ever been in a situation where you understand every single word a person is saying, but you still have absolutely no idea what they actually mean? You stand there nodding your head, smiling politely, but inside your brain is working overtime, trying to figure out if they are happy, sad, angry, or just being sarcastic. It is an incredibly frustrating experience. You have spent months or maybe even years learning English grammar. You have memorized long lists of vocabulary words. You have practiced reading and writing until your hands hurt. But when it comes to real life, when a native speaker opens their mouth and talks to you at a normal speed, something gets lost in translation. The problem is not your vocabulary. The problem is not your grammar. The problem is that you are listening for words, but you are not listening for the music. Welcome to English in Fluency. My name is Alex, and today we are going to fix this problem together. We are going to talk about something that most schools completely ignore, something that is absolutely essential for understanding real spoken English. We are going to talk about intonation and emphasis. Think about intonation as the melody of spoken English. It is the way our voices go up and down, the way we stretch certain sounds, and the way we make some words incredibly loud while we whisper other words. Emphasis is how we choose the most important word in a sentence and shine a giant spotlight on it. When you understand how to hear this spotlight, you will suddenly understand the hidden meaning behind everyday conversations. You will hear what matters most. You will finally catch the joke, understand the warning, and feel the real emotion behind the words. This is going to be a very deep dive, so grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let me show you exactly how to listen to English like a native speaker. Let me tell you a quick story about a woman named Maya to show you exactly what I mean. Maya moved from her home country to London about 2 years ago. She was great at English. She could write beautiful professional emails for her job, and she could read a newspaper without any trouble at all. But when she went out to lunch with her co-workers, she felt like she was invisible. One afternoon, her co-worker Leo looked at her and said, "You didn't bring your umbrella." Now, on paper, that is a very simple sentence. It is just a statement of fact. But Leo did not say it like a fact. He said it with his voice dropping very low at the end, and he stretched out the word didn't. Maya just smiled and said, "No, I forgot it." Then Leo gave her a strange look and said, "It is pouring rain outside." Maya felt terribly embarrassed. What she did not hear was the emotion in Leo's voice. When Leo said, "You didn't bring your umbrella," he was not just giving her information. He was expressing surprise and maybe a little bit of concern. His low voice at the end meant he was stating something obvious that shocked him. If Maya had known how to listen to his intonation, she would have heard him saying, "Oh my goodness, I cannot believe you do not have an umbrella in this terrible weather." That is the power of intonation. It changes a boring sentence into a full emotional experience. So, how do we start hearing this? The very first step is understanding that English is a stress-timed language. This is a very technical term, but I will make it super simple for you. It means that the important words in an English sentence act like the beat of a drum. They happen at regular times. The unimportant words get squeezed into the spaces between those beats. Imagine a song on the radio. The drum keeps a steady rhythm. In English, our nouns, our main verbs, our adjectives, and our adverbs are the drum beats. Words like a, the, is, to, and at are just quiet sounds that fill the gaps. When native speakers talk, they do not give every word the same amount of energy. If you try to listen to every single word equally, your brain will get overwhelmed, and you will miss the main point. You need to train your ears to ignore the quiet filler words and only focus on the loud, stressed words. That is where the true meaning lives. Let us look at a very basic example to see this in action. Imagine someone says to you, "I want to go to the store." If I say that sentence with a flat voice, with no emphasis at all, it just sounds like a robot reading a script. But nobody talks like that in real life. In real life, the person will put their vocal energy on the word want. They will say, "I want to go to the store." By making that word louder and slightly higher in pitch, they are telling you exactly what matters. They are not talking about who is going. They are not talking about where they are going. They are telling you about their strong desire to go. Now, what if I change the emphasis? What if I say, "I want to go to the store"? Suddenly, the meaning shifts completely. I am not focusing on my desire anymore. I am focusing on the location. Maybe we were talking about going to the park, and I am correcting you, meaning no, not the park, the store. The words are exactly the same. The grammar is exactly the same. But the emphasis tells you two completely different stories. This is what you need to listen for. Do not just ask yourself what the words mean. Ask yourself where the speaker is putting the spotlight. Now I want to talk about contrast. This is probably the most common reason native speakers use emphasis. We use contrast when we want to show that one thing is true, but another thing is false. There is a very famous sentence that teachers use to show this. The sentence is, "I didn't say he stole the money." I am going to say this sentence 7 different ways. I want you to close your eyes and just listen to the feeling of each one, even through the text. Number 1, I didn't say he stole the money. Here, the spotlight is on the word I. This means somebody said it, but it was not me. Maybe my brother said it, or maybe the boss said it, but do not blame me. Number 2, I didn't say he stole the money. The spotlight is on say. This means I did not speak the words out loud. Maybe I wrote it in an email, or maybe I just thought it, but I definitely did not use my voice. Number 3, I didn't say he stole the money. The spotlight is on he. This means I think somebody stole the money, but it was not him. Maybe it was a woman, or maybe it was a different man. Number 4, I didn't say he stole the money. The spotlight is on stole. This means he had the money, but he did not take it illegally. Maybe he borrowed it, or maybe he found it. Number 5, I didn't say he stole the money. The spotlight is on money. This means he stole something, but it was not money. Maybe he stole a car, or maybe he stole a wallet. Do you see how incredibly powerful this is? 7 different meanings from one simple sentence, just by moving the spotlight. When you are listening to English, if you hear someone suddenly punch a word with their voice, your brain should instantly think that they are comparing this to something else. What is the opposite of what they just stressed? Let me tell you about another character, a guy named Daniel. Daniel was working at a busy coffee shop. A customer walked in and asked for a large black coffee. Daniel poured it carefully and handed it over. The customer took one sip, made a terrible face, and said, "This is coffee." Daniel felt confused. Of course it is coffee. but the customer had put a huge amount of stress on the word coffee. Daniel did not realize that the customer was using contrast. The customer was actually saying, "This tastes like dirt, not like coffee." The customer was expecting a nice, smooth drink, and he got something terrible. By punching the word coffee, he was expressing his disappointment. He was comparing the reality to his expectation. If Daniel had been trained in listening to emphasis, he could have apologized and offered to make a new cup. But because he just heard the dictionary definition of the word coffee, he stood there looking confused. Emphasis is not just about volume, it is about expectation. When a word is stressed that does not normally need to be stressed, the speaker is trying to tell you that something is unusual. Now let us move away from contrast and talk about new information. This is the second biggest reason native speakers change their intonation. We naturally put the spotlight on words that are new to the conversation. If I already know something, or if we just talked about it, my voice will go flat and quiet on those words. But when I introduce a brand new idea, a new name, or a new place, my voice will jump up. Think about it like a treasure map. The old information is just the path you have already walked. It is boring. The new information is the big red mark that shows you where the treasure is. That is where the excitement is. Imagine a conversation between two friends, Sarah and Chloe. Sarah asks, "What did you do last night?" Chloe replies, "I went to a restaurant." Now, in that answer, the word went is an old, boring verb. The word a is just a tiny grammar word. The word to is a tiny grammar word. The only piece of new, exciting information is the word restaurant. So Chloe will naturally say, "I went to a restaurant." Her voice will go up on the last word. If Sarah then asks, "Oh, what kind of food did they have?" Chloe might say, "They had really good pizza." Again, the grammar words fade away, and the new information, pizza, gets the spotlight. When you are listening to a story, your ears should be like a radar, scanning for those jumps in pitch. The jumps tell you exactly what parts of the story are important. If you miss the nouns at the end of the sentences, you miss the whole point of the story. I want you to imagine you are sitting on a park bench. You are eavesdropping on two people sitting behind you. You cannot see their faces, so you have no body language to help you. You only have their voices. One person says, "So I finally met her mother." The voice goes up at the end. What does that tell you? It tells you that mother is the new, important information. The listener probably did not know this person had a mother in town, or maybe they had been waiting a long time for this meeting. Now, imagine the exact same words, but the voice drops down low at the end. "So I finally met her mother." The voice goes down. What does that tell you? A dropping voice usually means finality. It means the story is over. It means the speaker is stating a solid fact and does not expect a big reaction. Maybe the mother was boring, or maybe the speaker is just tired of talking about it. A rising voice at the end of a sentence means excitement, new information, or sometimes even a question. A falling voice means certainty, finality, or sometimes disappointment. You can figure out the entire mood of a conversation just by listening to the direction of the pitch at the end of the sentences. This brings me to a very common trap for English learners at your level. Statements that sound like questions. In many languages, you only raise your pitch at the end of a sentence if you are asking a direct question. But, in spoken English, we often raise our pitch at the end of a normal sentence just to check if the other person is listening or if they agree with us. We call this a rising declarative. Let me give you an example. Imagine a guy named Jason is packing a suitcase. He looks at his friend and says, "I am packing the blue shirt." If his voice drops at the end, he is just stating a fact. He is packing the blue shirt. End of story. But if he says, "I am packing the blue shirt," with his voice going up at the end, he is actually asking a question. He is saying, "Is it okay if I pack the blue shirt? Do you agree with this choice?" If you are listening to Jason and you hear that upward swing, but you think it is just a statement, you might stay silent. Then Jason will think you are ignoring him. You have to train your ear to hear that upward swing as a request for connection. It means the speaker wants you to nod your head or say yes. This happens all the time in offices, in homes, and in coffee shops. People say things like, "We are leaving at 5," or "You are going to eat all of that." The words are statements, but the intonation makes them questions. Let us take a moment to talk about emotions, because emotions completely hijack the normal rules of English intonation. When a person feels a very strong emotion, like extreme anger, absolute joy, or total shock, their voice stops following the normal patterns of new and old information. Instead, the emotion takes over the whole sentence. Think about a woman named Emma. Emma is driving in her car, and another car almost hits her. She slams on her brakes and yells, "What are you doing?" Now, normally, the word you would get the most stress because it is the new information. But when Emma is angry and scared, she stretches out the word "what" and yells it. "What are you doing?" The emotion has grabbed the first word and squeezed all the air out of it. When you listen to emotional English, do not try to analyze the grammar. Just feel the sound. Fear usually makes our voices go higher. Anger makes our voices go lower and louder. Sadness makes our voices go flat and quiet, almost like a whisper. If you are watching a movie or listening to a podcast and you cannot understand the words because the person is speaking too fast or too emotionally, stop trying to translate the words. Just listen to the music of their voice. Ask yourself, does this sound high and scared or low and angry? If you can guess the emotion correctly, you have understood 90% of the message, even if you missed the actual vocabulary. One of the hardest emotions to hear is sarcasm. Sarcasm is when a person says the exact opposite of what they really mean, usually to be funny or to show annoyance. If you are reading English, sarcasm is almost impossible to detect without context. But when you are listening, sarcasm has a very specific sound. It usually sounds overly dramatic, flat, or stretched out. Imagine a man named Marcus. It is raining very hard outside. The wind is blowing trees over. Marcus looks out the window and says, "What beautiful weather we are having." If he said that with a cheerful rising voice, he would mean it. But because it is a terrible storm, he uses sarcasm. He will probably say it with a flat, dead voice, or he might stretch out the word beautiful. What beautiful weather we are having. The exaggeration is the clue. Native speakers exaggerate the sounds when they are being sarcastic. If you hear a word stretched out like a rubber band, or if the voice sounds completely flat while saying something positive, your brain should immediately light up and say, "Wait a minute, they are joking. They mean the opposite." I want to give you a really detailed practice exercise right now. I am going to describe a scenario, and then I am going to describe exactly how the person speaks. I want you to visualize the sound in your head. Imagine a woman named Rachel. She is at a bakery. She orders a chocolate cake. The baker hands her a plain vanilla cake. Rachel looks at the cake, looks back at the baker and says, "I ordered a chocolate cake." Now, let us break down 3 different ways she could say this, and what each way means. Version 1. She puts the stress on the word chocolate. I ordered a chocolate cake. This is a simple correction. She is not angry. She is just pointing out the mistake. The spotlight is on the flavor. Version 2. She puts the stress on the word ordered. I ordered a chocolate cake. This implies a bit of frustration. It means she specifically asked for it, and she is annoyed that the baker did not listen to her request. Version 3. She stretches out the word a and speaks very slowly. I ordered a chocolate cake, with her voice rising at the end. This is pure confusion. She is looking at the vanilla cake and genuinely wondering if this is some kind of new type of chocolate cake that she does not know about. She is asking for an explanation. 3 completely different relationships with the baker, just by changing the melody. When you are out in the real world, people will do this to you all the time. They will correct you. They will tease you. They will warn you, all by shifting the stress in a sentence. You have to start treating stress shifts as a vocabulary word on its own. The shift itself has a meaning. Let us talk about a secret weapon for understanding spoken English. It is called chunking. Native speakers do not speak word by word. We speak in chunks or groups of words. We glue small words onto big words, and we pause between the chunks. This is why English sounds so fast to you. We are not actually speaking faster. We are just leaving out the spaces between the words. For example, nobody says, "What are you going to do?" That takes way too much time. We say, "What you gonna do?" We push all those tiny words together into one single sound. When you are listening, if you try to hear the individual words, "what," "are," "you," going to, you will fail, because those words do not exist in the spoken sentence. You have to listen for the chunk. If you hear the chunk whatcha, you automatically know it means what are you. If you hear gonna, you know it means going to. This is where listening practice becomes critical. You cannot learn chunks from a textbook. You have to hear them over and over again until your brain stops trying to break them apart. When you hear a chunk, treat it as one single word. Do not analyze the grammar inside the chunk. Just accept the meaning and move on to the next chunk. This will free up so much space in your brain to focus on the intonation and emphasis of the sentence. Now, let us put chunks, new information, and emotions all together. Imagine you are listening to a voicemail from a friend named Tom. He says, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you that I got the job." Let us listen to this like a native speaker. First, we hear the chunk, "I just wanted to tell you." This is a standard, polite opening. The voice is probably flat here because it is just filler. It is old information. We do not need to focus on it. Then we hear the chunk, "that I got." The voice might speed up a little bit here, building excitement. And then the final chunk, the job. This is where the magic happens. The voice will jump up high on the word job. The word job will be louder and longer than any other word in the sentence. Why? Because it is the new information, and it carries the emotion of extreme happiness. If you only had the energy to listen to one part of that voicemail, your ears should naturally gravitate toward the word job. Everything else is just a vehicle to deliver that one word. If Tom had said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you that I got the job," with a flat, quiet voice and a drop at the end, you would know immediately that something is wrong. Maybe he did not want the job, or maybe the pay is terrible. The words are exactly the same, but the music tells you the truth. I want to share a quick story about how I learned this lesson myself when I was learning a second language. I was sitting in a crowded train station. Two people were sitting next to me, speaking quickly. I knew all the vocabulary they were using. It was basic, everyday language. But I could not figure out if they were friends having a fun chat or if they were in the middle of an argument. I listened closer to the words. One guy said, "You always do this." I thought, "Oh no, they are fighting." But then I noticed his voice. It was high, it was bouncy, and he had a huge smile on his face. He was not angry, he was teasing his friend. The emphasis was on the word always, but it was exaggerated in a funny way, not an angry way. He was imitating an angry person to make a joke. If I had been reading a transcript of that conversation, I would have been completely wrong about their relationship. But because I finally stopped reading the words in my head and started listening to the actual sounds coming out of his mouth, I understood the reality. You have to stop translating English into your native language inside your head. Translation kills your ability to hear intonation. You are too busy doing math to hear the music. You have to train yourself to feel the English directly. Let us do another deep listening exercise. I am going to describe a situation, and I want you to imagine the sounds perfectly. Picture a man named Kevin. He is cooking dinner for his wife, Laura. He tastes the soup and realizes he forgot to add salt. Laura walks into the kitchen and asks, "How does the soup taste?" Kevin replies, "It tastes great." Now, imagine he says it with a normal, cheerful voice. "It tastes great." Laura will think the soup is delicious and sit down to eat. But imagine Kevin says it with a flat voice and a long pause before he speaks. "It tastes great." That pause is a massive red flag. That pause tells Laura that Kevin is lying. The word great is not stressed with excitement. It is spoken quietly, almost like a question. He is saying it tastes great, but his intonation is screaming that it tastes terrible. When you listen to English, silence is just as important as sound. A sudden pause before an adjective usually means the speaker is searching for a polite lie. A sudden pause before a name usually means the speaker has forgotten the name and is panicking. Pay attention to the empty spaces between the words. The music is not just the notes, it is also the rests between the notes. We have talked a lot about how emphasis changes the meaning of a sentence, but I want to mention how it changes the grammar. Sometimes, emphasis can turn a statement into a question without changing a single word. We talked about rising declaratives earlier, but let us go deeper. Imagine you are walking down the street with a friend. You see a dog that looks exactly like a dog you both know. You stop and point. That is Buster. If your voice drops at the end, you are stating a fact. You are sure it is Buster. But if your voice goes up at the end, that is Buster, you are turning it into a question. You are asking your friend to confirm your guess. The grammar did not change. There is no question mark in the words, but the rising pitch tells your friend that you are not sure, and you need them to say yes or no. If your friend replies, "That is Buster," with a falling voice, they are confirming it. But if they reply, "That is Buster," with a rising voice, They are just as confused as you are. This little dance of pitch happens constantly in casual English. If you only listen for question words like who, what, where, when, why, and how, you will miss half the questions people ask you. Let me tell you about a situation that happens to almost every English learner. You are in a meeting, or you are at a dinner party, and someone tells a story. The story is funny, and everyone in the room starts laughing. You laugh too, but inside you are sweating because you did not understand the punchline. You understood the words, but you did not understand why it was funny. 9 times out of 10, the humor comes from intonation, not from the vocabulary. The speaker set up an expectation with their voice, and then they broke that expectation. Humor relies heavily on surprise, and in spoken English, surprise is created by a sudden change in pitch or volume. If a speaker is talking very quietly and suddenly yells a single word, that contrast is funny. If a speaker is talking very fast and suddenly stops dead for 2 seconds, that silence is funny. If you want to understand English jokes, you have to stop focusing on the dictionary meaning of the words and start focusing on the delivery. Listen for the sudden changes. When the speaker does something unexpected with their voice, that is the moment the joke lands. If you train your ear to hear those unexpected changes, you will start laughing at the right time, and you will not feel left out anymore. I want to talk about one more character, a student named Oliver. Oliver was very smart. He watched English movies with English subtitles. He thought this was the best way to learn. But Oliver had a specific problem. He was reading the subtitles faster than the actors were speaking. His eyes were racing ahead of his ears. Because of this, he always knew what the actors were going to say before they said it. He never actually heard their intonation because his brain was already processing the text. When Oliver turned off the subtitles, he felt lost. He could not understand the movies at all. If you are doing this, I need you to stop right now. Subtitles are a great tool for beginners, but at your level, they are holding you back. You cannot learn the music of English by reading. You have to force your ears to do the work. It will feel uncomfortable at first. It will feel like you are deaf. But if you stick with it, your brain will slowly start to wake up and hear the patterns. Watch a short scene from a television show with no subtitles. Do not worry about understanding the plot. Just listen to the actors' voices. Close your eyes if you have to. Just listen to the music. Ask yourself, who sounds angry? Who sounds tired? Who is asking a real question? And who is just making a statement? If you can answer those questions without knowing the exact words, you have had a successful listening practice session. Let us talk about how to practice this in your daily life. You do not need to be sitting at a desk with a textbook to practice intonation. You can do it while walking to the store, while washing the dishes, or while sitting on a bus. The key is passive listening combined with active curiosity. Put on a podcast or an interview in English. Do not try to understand everything. Just let the sound wash over you. But every few minutes, a voice will jump out at you. Someone will stress a word, or someone will ask a question without using a question word. When that happens, pause the audio. Ask yourself why they did that. What were they trying to communicate? If you cannot figure it out, rewind it and listen again. Pay attention to the context. What were they talking about right before the voice jumped? Usually, the stressed word connects directly to the main topic of the conversation. By doing this for just 10 minutes a day, you will start to build a database in your brain of how native speakers use emphasis. You will start to predict where the spotlight is going to shine before it even happens. This is the secret to fluent listening. It is not about knowing every word, it is about knowing the rhythm. I want to give you a very specific example of how this rhythm works in a real conversation. Imagine two people are planning a trip. Person A says, "We could drive to the mountains." Person B says, "We could drive to the mountains, or we could fly to the beach." Listen to how person B sets up the contrast. First, they repeat what person A said, but they say it with a flat, quiet voice. "We could drive to the mountains." The flat voice tells you that this is old information. They are acknowledging it, but they are dismissing it. Then comes the word "or." This is the pivot point. The voice might pause slightly after "or," and then the new idea. "We could fly to the beach." The voice jumps up on fly, putting the spotlight on the new mode of transportation. And it jumps up again, or stays strong, on beach, putting the spotlight on the new destination. The entire meaning of person B's sentence is carried by the contrast between the flat, quiet first half and the loud, bouncy second half. If you only heard the words fly and beach, you would understand the entire message. That is how efficient native English listening is. We strip away the unimportant sounds and only process the highlights. Let us take a moment to discuss apologies, because the intonation of an apology can tell you if the person is actually sorry. Imagine a kid named Ethan accidentally breaks his mother's favorite vase. His mother walks in and gasps. Ethan says, "I am so sorry." If Ethan says it with a high, shaky voice, and he speaks very quickly, "I am so sorry," you can hear the genuine panic and regret. He is truly sorry. But imagine Ethan says, "I am so sorry," in a slow, deep voice, dragging out the word "so." That sounds sarcastic. He is not sorry at all. He is annoyed that he got caught, or he thinks his mother is overreacting. The words are identical. The emotion is the exact opposite. When you are listening to people apologize in English, do not just accept the words. Listen to the pitch. A high pitch usually means genuine, raw emotion. A low pitch, especially a slow, dragged-out low pitch, often means controlled, sarcastic, or insincere emotion. This applies to thank you as well. A quick, high thank you means real gratitude. A slow, low thank you can mean the exact opposite. The music never lies, even when the words do. Now, let us talk about something called thought groups. This is closely related to chunking, but it is more about the pauses we take when we speak. When native speakers talk, they do not just talk until they run out of breath. They divide their sentences into logical chunks, called thought groups, and they put tiny pauses between them. These pauses are like invisible punctuation marks. A short pause is like a comma. A long pause is like a period. Learning to hear these pauses will massively improve your listening comprehension because it helps you organize the information in your head. Imagine someone says, "If it rains tomorrow, which it probably will because the sky is very gray, we will have to cancel the picnic." If they say that without any pauses, it sounds like a massive, confusing wall of noise. But a native speaker will naturally say, "If it rains tomorrow," which it probably will, because the sky is very gray, we will have to cancel the picnic. The pauses give your brain time to process each piece of the puzzle. When you are listening to fast English, Do not let the lack of pauses overwhelm you. Use the rising and falling pitch to guess where the pauses should be. If the voice rises, it means the thought is not finished. If the voice falls, it means the thought is complete, even if the person keeps talking. Use these pitch changes as mental bookmarks to keep track of the sentence. I want to tell you about a common mistake that learners make when they try to speak with intonation. Sometimes, learners think that to sound natural, they have to stress every single important word equally. They read a sentence, and they hit every noun and every verb with the exact same amount of force. This sounds incredibly unnatural. It sounds like a robot that learned what emphasis is, but does not understand why we use it. Remember, emphasis is a spotlight. A spotlight only shines on one place at a time. If you point a spotlight at everything, it just lights up the whole room evenly, and nothing stands out. In a normal English sentence, there is usually only one primary stress. There might be a few smaller secondary stresses, but there is one king of the sentence. That king word gets the highest pitch, the longest duration, and the loudest volume. Every other word in the sentence is just there to support the king. When you listen to native speakers, try to identify the king word of each sentence. Once you find the king, the rest of the sentence will magically make sense, because all the other words are just leading up to the king or following after it. Now I want to shift our focus and look at how intonation controls the social world around you. Yes, intonation actually controls how polite you sound, how confident you sound, and even who gets to speak next in a conversation. If you have ever felt like native speakers are being rude to you, or if you have ever accidentally offended someone without knowing why, there is a very high chance it was an intonation problem. You said the right words, but the music was wrong. So, let me introduce you to a concept called softening. In English, we hate giving direct commands. If you walk into a coffee shop and say, "Give me a coffee," the grammar is perfectly correct, but the flat, direct intonation makes you sound like a military commander. It sounds aggressive. To sound like a normal, polite person, we have to soften the sentence with our voices. Imagine a guy named Liam wants to ask his coworker, Nora, to close the window. He could say, "Close the window," but instead, he stretches out the first word and raises his pitch. Would you close the window? Or he might add a little filler word at the beginning and drop his voice to sound less demanding. "Hey, I was wondering if you could close the window." Do you hear the difference? The actual request is still exactly the same. He still wants her to close the window. But the extra syllables and the higher pitch act like a cushion. They signal to Nora that Liam respects her space and is not giving her an order. When you are listening to native speakers, you will hear them do this constantly. They will take a simple sentence like, "I need the report," and turn it into a long, bouncy, musical sentence like, "I was kind of hoping I might be able to get that report from you sometime today." If you are a learner, your brain might get tired just hearing all those extra words. But you do not need to process every single word. Just hear the bouncy, rising music. That bouncy music is the universal sign for politeness in English. If you hear it, you know the person is being friendly, even if you do not understand all the vocabulary they are using. Let us look at the exact opposite of softening. Let us look at how we use intonation to show absolute certainty. Sometimes, someone will ask you a question, and you want to show them that there is zero doubt in your mind. You want to sound powerful and sure. To do this, native speakers use something called an emphatic auxiliary verb. I know that sounds like a terrible grammar term, but it is actually very simple. Think about the sentence, "I like this song." That is a normal, calm sentence. But if someone says, "You don't like this song?" you might reply, "I do like this song." By stressing the word do, you are punching the sentence with your fist. You are saying, "Do not doubt me. I am completely certain." You can do this with the word does, with the word did, with the word is, and with the word have. Imagine a woman named Haley. Her boss thinks she forgot to send an email. The boss says, "You didn't send the email." Haley replies, "I did send the email." That stressed did is her shield. It is her way of defending herself without using any angry words. When you are listening to English, if you suddenly hear someone yell a small grammar word like do, did, or is, your brain should instantly recognize that they are defending themselves or correcting someone. That small word carries the weight of their confidence. Let us move on to another very common listening challenge: listening to lists. When people talk, they love to give lists. They list ingredients, they list steps, they list reasons. But how do you know when the list is finished? If you are taking notes or trying to follow directions, knowing when a list ends is incredibly important. Lucky for you, English Intonation has a built-in alarm system for lists. It goes like this. Item 1, voice goes up. Item 2, voice goes up. Item 3, voice drops down to the floor. The dropping voice is the alarm that tells you the list is over. Let me give you an example. Imagine a man named Jacob is telling his friend what he bought at the grocery store. He says, "I bought apples, bananas, and oranges." If I write that with flat text, it is hard to feel the rhythm. But when Jacob speaks, he says, "I bought apples," and his voice goes up. "Bananas," and his voice goes up again. And oranges, and his voice falls heavily. That falling voice on the last item is your signal to stop writing. It means the thought is complete. If you are listening to someone give you directions to a place, and they say, "Turn left at the light, go straight for 2 miles, and then take the highway," you will hear that exact same upward, downward pattern. The moment you hear the voice drop, you know the instruction is finished. If you miss the drop, you might keep waiting for more directions, and you will end up completely lost. This list pattern actually applies to more than just groceries and directions. It applies to any time a person is building up to a final point. Think about a lawyer in a movie making a closing argument. They might say, "We have the evidence, we have the motive, and we have the witness." Up, down. The falling voice on the last word makes it sound powerful and final. It makes the listener feel like the speaker is in total control. When you are having a conversation with someone and you hear them start using that upward pattern, you can mentally prepare yourself for the big ending. You know they are leading somewhere, so you can focus all your energy on the last word they are going to say, because that last word is going to be the most important one. This is a massive hack for listening comprehension. Instead of trying to remember apples and bananas, just wait for the oranges. Wait for the voice to drop, and that is where the real meaning lives. Now I want to talk about something that causes a lot of anxiety for English learners. It is the sound of hesitation. When native speakers talk, they do not speak in perfect pre-written sentences. They think out loud. They change their minds in the middle of a sentence. They forget what they were going to say and have to find a new word. As a listener, these moments of hesitation can sound terrifying. You might think, "Oh no, I missed a word," or "Why did they stop talking?" But hesitation is actually your best friend. When a speaker hesitates, they are giving your brain a free vacation. You do not have to process any new information for a second. You can just breathe. But hesitation also has its own special intonation. If a speaker pauses and their voice trails off into a whisper, it usually means they are unsure or they are trying to be polite. Imagine a woman named Chloe is asked if she likes a painting. She pauses and says quietly, "Well, it is very interesting." That trailing off tells you she does not like it at all. She is searching for a polite word. On the other hand, if a speaker pauses and makes a sharp clicking sound with their tongue, or if they say a loud, frustrated sound, it usually means they are thinking hard, or they are annoyed. If you can learn to hear the difference between a polite whisper hesitation and a frustrated, loud hesitation, you will understand so much more about the people you are talking to. There is another type of hesitation that is very specific to spoken English, and it is called a holding pattern. Have you ever been talking to someone and they start a sentence, but then someone else interrupts them? The first person wants to finish their sentence, so they keep making a sound to hold their spot in the conversation. They might say, but, but, or they might stretch out a word like, but I was. They are not actually saying words. They are just making noise to tell the other person, "Hey, I am still holding the microphone. Do not take it from me." If you are listening to a group of native speakers having a fast, excited conversation, you will hear these holding patterns all the time. People will step on each other's sentences, and they will use stretched-out sounds to fight for their turn to speak. If you do not know what these sounds mean, the conversation will sound like absolute chaos. It will sound like a room full of crazy people making noises. But once you realize that a stretched-out sound is just a person politely waiting their turn, the chaos suddenly makes perfect sense. It becomes a beautifully organized system of taking turns. You do not need to understand the words during these fights. Just sit back and watch the tennis match until someone's voice drops, signaling that they have won the turn to speak. Let me tell you a story about a man named Greg who learned this the hard way. Greg was at a dinner party in New York. There were 6 people around the table, all talking incredibly fast. Greg was trying to follow the conversation, but every time he thought someone was finished talking, another person would jump in, and then the first person would make a weird sound and start talking over them. Greg thought they were having a massive argument. He thought they hated each other. He spent the whole dinner feeling stressed and uncomfortable. But after the dinner, he realized everyone was happy and laughing. They were not arguing. They were just using very aggressive holding patterns to share their stories. They were stretching out their words and jumping over each other because they were excited, not because they were angry. Greg made a mistake that many learners make. He judged the emotion based on the speed and volume of the voices, without listening to the actual melody. Excited English can sound exactly like angry English to an untrained ear. The difference is in the pitch. Excited voices bounce up and down like a ball. Angry voices stay low and heavy like a thunderstorm. Once Greg learned to hear the bouncy pitch, he could finally relax at dinner parties. I want to shift our focus now to a very specific skill that will make you sound incredibly advanced when you speak. But more importantly, it will help you catch tiny details when you listen. It is the art of echoing. In casual English conversations, we do not always reply with full sentences. Very often, we just repeat the last few words the person said, but we change the intonation to turn it into a question or a statement of surprise. Imagine your friend says, "I just got a new dog." You do not say, "Oh, really? You got a new dog?" That takes too much energy. You just say, "A new dog?" with your voice jumping up high. By just echoing the words with a rising pitch, you are telling your friend that you are surprised and you want them to tell you more. This happens constantly. If someone says, "I am moving to Japan," you say, "To Japan?" If someone says, "The meeting is canceled," you say, "Canceled?" When you are listening, if you hear someone repeat your own words back to you with a rising voice, they are not mocking you. They are just showing active listening. They are participating in the conversation using the smallest amount of words possible. If you can start doing this when you speak, people will think you are a fluent listener, even if you do not know what to say next. It buys you time. It keeps the conversation moving. But echoing can also be used to show disbelief or sarcasm. Imagine a teenager named Noah comes home at 2 in the morning. His father says, "Where have you been?" Noah says, "I was just studying at the library." His father echoes him, but this time his voice drops low, and he stretches out the word "just." "You were just studying at the library." That dropping, stretched-out echo is a massive red flag. The father is saying, "I do not believe a single word you are saying." If Noah only listened to the words his father said, he might think his father was just repeating the sentence. But because Noah is a native speaker, he hears the low pitch and the stretched word, and he knows instantly that he is in big trouble. This is a brilliant tool for your listening practice. When you watch English movies or listen to podcasts, pay attention to when characters repeat each other. Listen to how they change the pitch. If the pitch goes up, they are surprised or curious. If the pitch goes down and the words get stretched, they are suspicious, angry, or sarcastic. You can understand the entire conflict of a movie scene just by listening to how the actors echo each other. Let us take all of these pieces and put them into one final massive listening scenario. I want you to close your eyes and imagine you are sitting in a living room with two friends, a guy named Ethan and a girl named Mia. They are talking about a third friend who is not there, a guy named Leo. Ethan says, "Leo quit his job." Listen to the emphasis. He puts the stress on the word quit. Leo quit his job. That tells you that quitting is the new, shocking information. Mia replies with an echo, but her voice goes up. "He quit." She is asking for confirmation. She is surprised. Ethan confirms it with a falling voice. "Yeah, he quit." Mia then asks a clarification question. "When did he quit?" Notice how she puts the stress on the word when. When did he quit? She is not asking about who quit. She knows it was Leo. She wants the time. Ethan replies, "He quit on Friday." He puts the stress on Friday because that is the new information. But Ethan does not just say it normally. He stretches out the word Friday a little bit. He quit on free day. That stretching tells Mia that there is more to the story. It builds tension. Mia takes the bait. Why did he quit? Stress on why. Ethan pauses. He uses a hesitation sound. Well, he says quietly, trailing off. That trailing well tells Mia that the reason is bad or complicated. Ethan continues. He said the boss was crazy. Stress on crazy. Mia laughs and uses sarcasm. Oh, the boss was crazy? She stretches out crazy and drops her voice. She is echoing him to show that she does not think the boss was actually crazy. She thinks Leo is just being dramatic. Ethan defends Leo by using an emphatic auxiliary verb. No, the boss is crazy. He punches the word is. He is correcting Mia's sarcasm. Mia backs down and uses a softening phrase. Okay, well, I guess it was a hard decision. Her voice goes up at the end, making it sound like a gentle question. Ethan agrees with a falling voice. Yeah, it was. End of story. If you can sit back and hear that entire ping-pong match of pitches, rises, falls, stretches, and stresses, you have achieved something amazing. You are no longer reading English. You are feeling English. You understand that Ethan is serious, Mia is teasing, and Leo is in trouble, all without anyone stating those facts directly. Now, I want to give you the ultimate test of your listening skills. I want to talk about what happens when you take away the visual clues entirely. I want to talk about listening on the phone. For an English learner, talking on the telephone is often the most terrifying experience in the world. When you talk to someone face to face, you have a safety net. You can watch their hands, you can see their facial expressions, and you can look at their lips to help you figure out the words. But on the phone, all of that is gone. You are floating in the dark, and the only thing you have to hold on to is the sound of their voice. This is exactly where understanding intonation changes from a helpful trick to an absolute survival tool. Let me tell you about a man named Sam, who moved to a new city for work. Sam was fine talking to his co-workers in the office, but his job required him to make phone calls to clients. Every time the phone rang, his heart started beating fast. One afternoon, Sam called a landlord to ask about an apartment. The landlord answered and said, "Hello, this is Peter." Sam said, "Hi, Peter. I am calling about the apartment on Oak Street." Then Peter replied with just one word. He said, "Right." Now, on paper, the word right just means correct. But Peter did not say it like a statement. He dragged the word out, and his voice dropped down very low. "Right!" To Sam, this sounded aggressive. He thought Peter was angry that he was calling. Sam almost hung up the phone in a panic. But what Peter was actually doing was just acknowledging the call. In spoken English, a long, low right is simply a filler word that means, "I hear you," or "go ahead." If Peter had said right with a high, rising voice, he would have been asking Sam if he was correct. But the low, slow right was just a bridge to the next part of the conversation. When you are on the phone, you have to completely trust these little musical cues. If you let your anxiety interpret a low right as an angry threat, you will never survive a phone call. Let us look at another tiny word that causes massive confusion on the phone. The word okay. Imagine a woman named Vivian is explaining a problem to her IT support guy on the phone. She gives him a long explanation of what her computer is doing. The IT guy is silent for a moment, and then he says, "Okay." If he says it with a sharp, falling voice, like a door slamming shut, "Okay," that means he understands the problem completely, and he is ready to move on to the solution. It is a confident sound. But what if Vivian explains the problem, and the IT guy says, "Okay," stretching it out with a rising pitch at the end? That rising stretch means confusion. He is saying, "I hear your words, but your words do not make sense to me." He is asking her to explain it again without actually asking a question. If Vivian does not hear that rising pitch, she will think he understands her, and she will just sit in silence waiting for him to fix the computer. On the phone, stretched out words are a cry for help. A stretched "okay" means "I am confused." A stretched "right" means "I am thinking." A stretched "so" means "I am about to say something important." You have to become a detective of stretched vowels. They carry the emotional truth of the phone call. Now I want to talk about a completely different listening environment. I want to talk about listening to stories. Native speakers love to tell stories, but they do not tell stories in a flat, boring voice. They use intonation to build a world in your mind. They speed up when the action is exciting, and they slow down when they want to create tension. Think about a grandfather telling a scary story to his grandchildren. He does not just say, "The monster was in the closet." He slows his voice down. He lowers his pitch to a whisper. He pauses before the final word. The monster was in the closet. That sudden drop in speed and volume forces you to lean in. It creates suspense. If you are listening to a friend tell you a story about something crazy that happened to them at work, pay attention to their speed. When their voice speeds up and the volume gets louder, they are telling you the exciting part. When their voice suddenly drops to a slow, quiet pace, they are setting you up for a punchline or a big surprise. If you only listen to the words, you miss the roller coaster ride of the story. You have to let your body feel the speed of their voice. If they are talking fast, your brain should feel excited. If they slow down, your brain should feel tense. That is how you truly enjoy a story in a second language. Let me give you a detailed example of this storytelling speed. Imagine a guy named Marcus is telling his friend about a near accident he had while driving. Marcus starts by setting the scene. His voice is at a normal, relaxed speed. "So, I was driving home from the store. Nothing special here." Then he starts building the tension. He drops his volume slightly. "And I noticed this car coming up really fast behind me." The slower, quieter voice tells you that something bad is about to happen. Then, the action hits. Marcus suddenly speeds up, and his voice gets much louder. "Suddenly the car swerved into my lane, and I had to slam on the brakes." The fast, loud speed matches the fast, loud action of the car. Finally, the resolution. Marcus takes a deep breath, and his voice slows back down to normal, but with a shaky quality. It was honestly the scariest moment of my life. If you are listening to Marcus and you tune out for just 2 seconds during the slow part, you will miss the transition, and the loud part will shock you in a bad way. You will feel lost. But if you ride the wave of his speed, speeding up with him and slowing down with him, the story becomes a physical experience. You do not need to know every single word he says to feel the fear and the relief. The speed and volume do all the work for you. There is one more storytelling trick I need to teach you before we finish. It is called the breath intake. Sometimes words cannot express the emotion a person is feeling, so they just take a sudden, sharp breath before they speak. Imagine a girl named Hannah is telling her friend about an amazing surprise party she had for her birthday. She says, I walked into the room, and everyone was there. But right before she says everyone was there, she takes a sharp, loud breath. That breath is not a word, but it carries the emotion of absolute shock and joy. It is the sound of surprise. If you are watching a movie and a character sees a ghost, you will hear that sharp breath before they scream. When you are listening to people talk, do not ignore the breathing. A sudden, sharp breath means surprise, fear, or excitement. A slow, heavy exhale means relief or disappointment. A held breath means tension. Your ears need to pick up on these non-word sounds just as much as they pick up on the actual vocabulary. These sounds are the punctuation marks of human emotion. I know that trying to hear all of these things at once feels completely overwhelming. You might be thinking, Alex, how am I supposed to listen for the king word, and the pitch, and the speed, and the breathing, and the stretched vowels all at the same time? I am going to let you in on a little secret. You do not have to. When you first learn to drive a car, you have to think about the steering wheel, the gas pedal, the mirrors, and the blinkers all at the same time. And it feels impossible. But after a few months, your body just does it automatically. Your brain handles the small stuff in the background. Listening to English intonation is the exact same process. Right now, you have to think about it consciously. You have to ask yourself, is the voice going up or down? But the more you practice, the more your brain will handle it in the background. Eventually, you will not have to analyze the pitch at all. You will just feel that the person is angry. You will not have to calculate the speed. You will just feel that the story is getting exciting. You have to go through the awkward conscious phase right now to get to the smooth, automatic phase later. Do not give up just because it feels like a lot of mental work today. Your brain is building muscles that you will use for the rest of your life. I also want to take a moment to talk about accents. A lot of learners tell me that they cannot hear the intonation because the speaker has a different accent. Maybe they are listening to British English, or Australian English, or Southern American English, and it sounds completely different from the textbook English they learned in school. I want to reassure you about something very important. The rules of intonation are mostly universal across all accents of English. A British person, an Australian person, and an American person will all put the spotlight on the new information. They will all raise their pitch to ask a question. They will all drop their pitch to show finality. The melody might sound a little different, just like a pop song and a jazz song sound different, but the underlying beat is exactly the same. If you learn to hear the spotlight in standard American English, you will still be able to hear the spotlight in British English. The accent might change the shape of the words, but it does not change the emotional music behind them. So do not use accents as an excuse to stop practicing. Treat different accents like different genres of music. Enjoy the variety, but trust that the fundamental rules of emphasis still apply. Let us do one final powerful exercise to lock all of this into your brain. I want you to think about a time when you were very tired, or very sick, or very distracted, and someone was talking to you in your native language. You were not really listening to the words they were saying, but you still knew exactly what they wanted. You knew if they were asking a question, you knew if they were annoyed, and you knew if they were making a joke. How did you do that? You did it because you were relying entirely on their intonation. You were not processing the words, so the music was the only thing left. That is exactly how I want you to listen to English sometimes. I want you to pretend that you do not understand any English words at all. I want you to close your eyes, put on a podcast or a video of native speakers, and just listen to the sounds as if they were instruments in a band. Ignore the meaning of the words completely. Just listen to the rhythm, the volume, and the pitch. Ask yourself, does this instrument sound happy? Does this instrument sound confused? If you can sit there for 5 minutes and just feel the mood of the conversation without knowing what the words mean, you have mastered the hardest part of listening comprehension. You have separated the music from the lyrics. This brings us to the end of our journey together for today. We have covered so much ground. We talked about how to find the most important word in a sentence by listening for the loud, high spotlight. We talked about how a rising voice means new information, or a question, and a falling voice means certainty, or the end of a story. We talked about how stretched words signal sarcasm or confusion, and how fast speed signals excitement. We talked about surviving phone calls by trusting tiny words like okay and right, and we talked about letting the speed of a story carry your emotions. You now have a complete map of the hidden world of spoken English. But a map is completely useless if you leave it folded up in your pocket. You have to take it out and walk the path. You have to start applying these rules to the English you hear every single day. Promise me that you will not just close this video and go back to reading textbooks. Promise me that you will put on a movie, turn off the subtitles, and hunt for the king word in every single sentence. Promise me that you will start paying attention to the music. I am Alex, and this has been English in Fluency. My entire purpose on this channel is to take the boring, difficult parts of learning English and turn them into something you can actually enjoy and use in the real world. If today's lesson opened your eyes to something new, if it made you realize that you are not bad at listening, you were just never taught how to listen, then I need you to do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. When you subscribe, you are not just clicking a button, you are telling the system that this kind of deep, practical teaching matters. It helps English in Fluency reach more people just like you. People who are tired of textbook English and want to sound like real human beings. I also want you to go down to the comments and write the word music. Just that one word. I want to see how many of you truly understand that English is not just a list of rules, but a living, breathing melody. And please, share this video with a friend. Send it to someone in your group chat who gets nervous when the phone rings. Tell them that Alex has a trick that will fix it. You have the power to help your friends succeed. Keep practicing. Keep your ears open. Trust the music. And I will see you in the next video.